Fi and Eric Sheethaber. We're going to be talking through the 6-game MLB slate, and much more exciting to me, the 2-game NBA slate. I'm pretty pumped. I'm interested to hear what you think about your Knicks, and I have a lot of very mixed emotions about that series. Not emotions, actually, just thoughts. It's just the strangest matchup in history. Because you have one team that's just going to try and play 11 guys and blitz the other team. The other team's going to play 6 guys and have them play a million minutes. I don't know it'll work. We'll see.
Well, I mean, forgive me for being simplistic, but I have a feeling that I know which team is more likely to get there in DFS. I mean, if you have one team with 6 players and the other with 11,
exactly.
Okay.
Oh no, 100%. I mean, when I was building for like showdown things, it's like he wants to give you 5 Knicks.
Yep.
And I understand why. But anyway, we could start off with some baseball. Not really like a whole lot changed for me, but sort of curious where you're sort of at, stacks wise thing with everything. There's still some concern about that game going 9, even though they moved it up a little bit. Just wondering about that KC, sort of where you're at stacks wise, and then your pitchers.
Couple of things. So first, I just redid the projections and I just uploaded them, and I have not built a single lineup yet. So we're gonna figure that out along the way. But I'm gonna tell you who I would like to get before I build. So looking at the numbers and the projections here, it looks very similar, although smooth at the pitcher position. So I do have Haney, Reagans, and Castillo as being like the top 3. And they're the 3 highest owned, which doesn't surprise me too much. And then I do have quite a bit of a drop to Buehler and Alex Wood as my next ones. And then basically no one else on the board. And so what I'm then left with is my 2 just kind of total punts that I talked about earlier that are not going to be in the projections pretty much at all. That would be Sean Manaea, but then the guy from Miami, and I don't even see him. Oh, what do I have? 8? Actually, I have an okay projection here. Hold on. Why do I not have him in here for some reason? That's Vandal. Wait, hold on. Munoz. What's my projection on him? Yeah, it's only like 8 points. So, but I don't know. I think that because it's a small slate, I might end up being tempted to force that in. But certainly, according to the numbers, it looks like some combination of Castillo, Reagans, and Heaney make the most sense. Do you sort of agree with the pitching, or do you have any pivots aside from those 3 that I didn't talk about?
Those are the 3 main ones for me. Next zone for me, I have Darvish. And I actually have him a pretty good amount because people aren't playing him. And I was not going to play him as mega chalk, but like 20% on a 6-gamer is not mega chalk. And there's no reason you play him with Castillo. It's not that hard to do depending on who you're stacking. I have Reagans. I have the 3 you mentioned, the 3 obvious ones. And then I splashed around. I have 7% of Munoz and 7% of Manaea. But Heaney and Castillo are my 2 far and away the most owned for me. So yeah, we're basically in the same page. I just wanted to get a little exposure, like you said, it's a small slate. I do think that Manaea at super low ownership is kind of like shocking me that he could be this low owned on this slate because there aren't that many other guys. I have some Kyle Gibson, but like I'm kind of thinking like maybe I just play Manaea like he's 500 more. We have seen nothing out of St. Louis. They're the second worst team in baseball against left-handed pitching. I don't know why we can't play a little bit of Manaea, even though you're going to end up with a lot of St. Louis, pretty much whether you play them or not because of the pricing, right? I mean, that's what I'm looking at it at least.
Yeah. Before we go on to the hitting, just to capture this on FanDuel, and this before. Listen, all these takes are before I do like sim adjustments and ownership adjustments. Is I am basically getting either Castillo or Reagans on FanDuel. Just kind of throw that out there. As far as stacks, well, first of all, just we don't have lineups as far as at least I know on Miami, LA yet.
No, not yet. And no Texas lineup.
And as far as stacks go, before I screw around a little bit, we're once again at that stage where I'm getting all of this Seattle. Like just for context, if I made no adjustments other than my normal Saber Sim build, I'd be getting out of 50 lineups, I would be getting 50 Seattle stacks. literally 100% Seattle. But also to put it in a little more context, like I built like a 5,000 lineup set, and if you do it across like the entire pool of lineups, they're just like one of a bunch. You know what I mean? Like the Dodgers, the Royals, the Rangers would all be there. But for whatever reason, of the top 50 rated by Saber Score, right? I'm getting all of this Seattle. And before I forget, on FanDuel, and then you can talk about it, it's pretty similar. Like I'm getting like all the Seattle, and then the next group would be the Mets and the Cardinals. So that just on raw projections, just the regular Saber Sim builds, those would be the stacks that I'd be getting. What are your like? And before, again, I don't know what I'm going to get yet until I start running my stuff, which I'm going to do in like 5 minutes. But what are you getting right now as far as your top stacks?
Well, I actually think Seattle is going to be the most popular team. So I don't have one player from Seattle in one lineup. Maybe I end up with one or two. I've still got a little whittling to do, but there's absolutely no reason I'm going to target a team with a 20-mile-an-hour winds blowing in against them as chalk. Like it just doesn't make any sense to me. I understand you can win without hitting home runs in current DFS, and it's going to be hard to hit home runs. And I'm not going to do it. So that's sort of where I've come to it. It is interesting because I would like them. I get the reason why. Like you have a low strikeout pitcher, and the one thing Seattle does, they actually when they make contact, they're fine. They're good off. They're a reasonable offense. They just don't make contact. They strike out more than everybody else does. So it should sort of even out for them. I see why the matchup makes sense. I just can't do it as chalk personally.
Let me then but run two other teams by you. That if I were just going to not use SaberSim, if I were just going to use like the TrueDFS, stacked rankings or whatever, I would be getting either St. Louis or maybe Texas. So and that's counting, some ownership and stuff like that. What do you think of St. Louis and Texas then?
Those are by far my two highest. Texas is by far my highest owned team, and
okay, cool.
It's just a betting the long term results and get them while they're low owned. You know what I mean? Like,
okay,
I understand it's not a great hitter's park. It's a downgrade. For them, it's 58 degrees. There is wind blowing out for what it's worth, but I think it's a very strange situation where I feel like this game, if it was played in Texas a week ago on a 12 gamer, you'd have Texas as the chalk. Like people have sort of gotten tired of Texas not, struggling a little bit. And I get it, but I am going to jump on that. And I don't buy the projections on St. Louis. I don't buy the projected ownership. I think that Jose Furman is going to be extremely popular at 2.1K leading off. I think Dylan Carlson is going to be extremely popular batting fifth. The problem is the expensive guys like Goldschmidt and Arenado are basically expensive for no reason. They've combined for 5 home runs. They have like one of the lowest home run rates of any players at first and third base. But at some point, maybe it evens out. I still think that you're going to get to like a lot of the St. Louis. I'm not fully stacking St. Louis at all, but I have Furman. I mean, I'm sort of believing the ownership is going to be lower than 20%. That's enough to make me play Furman, Herrera, and Carlson a ton because they're my value savers. And like I said, I'm not going any 5-man Dodger stacks, but I'm happy to go 4-man. And I actually think every minute that the lineup doesn't get released, the more you can expect the ownership to be slightly lowered. The best way to get different if you're stacking the Dodgers would probably be to play Teoscar Hernandez and Max Muncy. You're not going to get super different, but those would be the two guys who probably end up the lowest owned. So that would be the other team for me. So my main stacks are Texas, KC, but I do have some of this 4-3-1. I have some 3-3-2s today. I just don't think that I like the stacks outside of Texas and the Dodgers enough to want to fully stack that many other teams. I think I might have one 5-man KC, but most of it's 4-man for me today outside of Texas, where I'm happy to go 5-man.
So I just shared my screen, and I'm going to just, again, I want to do as much process as possible. So I'm going to show you exactly, not exactly, but one way to use SaberSim and the Sims to build some lineups. Now, again, as I mentioned earlier, when I talked about exposures, what I did was I uploaded the projections here, and whichever projections you use, it'd be the same thing, whatever. And you see that because it's red and green, it replaced the SaberSim projections with what I put in. And I ran 5,000 lineups with just the regular SaberSim defaults, which were basically 20 max. I didn't do the 150 max. And that's how I ended up with, of these 5,000 lineups, these exposures. Now, again, I'm ranking these by just straight It says Sabres score the large slate. Now, if you were so inclined, you could click on the eyeball and see what the formula is for how they rank these lineups. But I'm not too concerned about that. What's important is that I'm looking at this whole pool exposure thing and not this regular exposure thing. And the reason why is because when I run my contest sims, which I'm going to do now, one main question you have to answer is what field of lineups to compare your set of lineups to figure out what has the best simulated ROI given all the payout structures. So what I'll do is, so this is more my contests are right now. You'll see that your normal settings, it'll default to SaberSim's recommendation, which is what it feels the high stakes 20 max field is going to look like. Mm-hmm. And you can certainly do that. I'm not going to dispute the efficacy of doing that. But what I like to do, just because I do a lot of work with the projections as well. And I like to think that my big pool of lineups is going to be better than their stock high stakes 20 max. So what I'll do is, instead of using that as my field, I'll put build one, which basically is using the 5,000 lineup set that I created to compare lineups to. I'm going to do the same thing with actually all the contests. Now, again, if I were really super smart, I would do a separate build for all these different types of contests to debt ownership and be able to figure out who's going to be higher owned in the bigger buy-in versus the smaller buy-in. But I don't have that much time, so this is what's going to have to do. So I changed all this stuff, and now what we're going to do is we're going to run the contest sims. And one thing that's cool about this is, for people that are worried about, everybody doing the same thing and everybody using the same sims and all this stuff, already I'm guaranteeing that whatever I'm doing is not going to be done by pretty much anybody on the face of the earth, because I'm using projections not everybody's using. I'm just doing settings no one else is using, and then I'm going to be tweaking stuff in a way that no one else is using. Every one of these little things that you do is different is going to separate yourself. So just for fun, let's see what the exposure would look like. Remember that exposure we had before, all the Seattle and all that stuff? Let's see how much difference there is, if at all. And I haven't even looked yet to see what the relay throw would look like when we sort by risk-adjusted ROI, having applied the contest sims. Okay, so now that we've done that, just for the hell of it, now the stack exposure by team is actually 56% Dodgers, followed by still 50% Seattle, but then St. Louis and Kansas City. Well, that's sort of interesting to me, that I'm getting all this Dodgers only after applying the contest sims. Now, again, we can talk about why that is. I really don't care too much, but I do like that the contest sims did something. You know what I mean? To smooth out that original build. The next thing I'll look at is stack exposure to see what I'd be getting. And
did they tell you what type of stack those stacks were? Or this is?
Yeah, I'm doing that right now.
Oh,
so you'll see that of all the stacks I have, I do have 40% of them are 5-2, 14% are 5-3s, then some 4-3s, but some 4-2s, 4-2-2s, 4-4s, whatever it is. And if you wanted to dive into it, just to analyze, you could see what type of Dodger stacks there are, how many 5-mans, how many whatever. But what I like to do, again, this is just my own choice. This depends on your view of things. Bobby doesn't mind having these 3-3-2s and 3-2-2s and whatever. So he might leave this. I for example, 4 zeros. I'm not good enough to play 4 zeros. There's no way I'm going to get a 4-0 home. That means I'm going to have to be perfect.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
And also, even honestly, 4-2s and 4-3s are just kind of rough for me. But what I will do is I will, on a slate like this, let the 4-2-2s in, let the 4-4s in. I'll even let these 3-2s in if I get those. But everything else is just I'm just going to X them out. And again, this is, changes you can make to separate yourself from everybody else. All right. And then just for fun, if you wanted to look and see what the pictures would look like with this type of build, I'd be getting, mostly the guys I mentioned, Castillo, Reagans, and Heaney, some of everybody else. And the only thing that's missing from this is my desire, if I felt like it, to add in the Atlanta dude. I'm not the Miami dude. And that's a choice whether I want to do that or not. If I wanted to do that, I could just literally manually go and just give him an exposure. So just for now. Oh, and here's another different change you can make. So with this min uniques number, like if you leave it the way it is, min uniques 1, then you're usually going to be pretty concentrated with your exposure. In other words, like a lot of your Dodger stacks, for example, are going to look the same. There's going to be like one guy maybe different, but if you switch it up just a little bit, make it min uniques 2, you might give yourself a little bit more more variance. So we're going to save these to the relay throw thusly. And what we're going to do is for now, and this is, listen, you have some trust, right? So I would do the exact same process for each of these tournaments and just put this stuff in and not even look to see what I have. Now, again, this type of approach is not for everybody, but if you're going to be really dogmatic about that it's process over bias or anything like that, you should be able to engage in a process where you do not look and see who you have. Now, again, but that could be like stupid too. Like part of a process could be having some common sense and having some no ball take or something like that you wouldn't want a certain thing. But this is something that I do from time to time, and just to kind of show you. And what I do with MMA, for example, like MMA, I don't even look and see what I have until the first fight starts. So that's what's going on with DraftKings.
I just want to touch on that, what you're saying. First of all, I think everybody should really be listening to this. Like Sheets does this, and he does it really well, and he won't talk about himself, but he's done very, very well with this process. So I would be listening to this. I wanted to throw out that I think especially in baseball, I'd be more okay almost not looking at my teams for biases. I think when it comes to like basketball playoffs and stuff, and there's weird things like where sometimes it'll give you like I did a regular build earlier. I just had them run me a build, and for some reason they left 5,600 on the table, and I was playing Alec Burks instead of Jalen Brunson or something like that. Like it just didn't make any sense, stuff like that. I think you could have some biases towards, but the process stuff that is very different, especially for baseball. For golf, I would say the same thing. Especially, I know you're fine with it in basketball too, but I think that sometimes I notice a few things if I leave certain things off.
Well, I'll tell you guys something else. Again, I was on the NASCAR show with Brandon over the weekend, and I told this story. I tell it all the time. Okay, that you guys can do what you want, but this is my history is that I've had a decent handful of big hits in these big GPPs, and I would say every single one of them, the lineup that actually hit for the $1 zillion or whatever was a lineup that I never in a million years would have had.
Wait a minute. How about the 777 that you just finished second in though? You built that one by hand.
Yeah.
You built the monster that one time when you won it by hand. I remember that one.
Yeah. But I mean the relay throws and stuff like that.
Yeah. Gotcha.
And like none of them would ever have passed the eye test ever.
Right.
So I'm not saying that means you should make sure they're all ugly, but I'm just saying that sometimes the biases are kind of nasty.
Sometimes the 90% Dylan Moore works out.
Sometimes the 90% Dylan Moore works out. That is indeed the point. So as you guys see, I'm doing the same thing with FanDuel. So I did the exact same process, and likewise, I'm going to be a little bit cavalier with my stats, but not so much. So like on FanDuel, I'll play some 4-2-2s, 4-4s, and 4-3s, and I think that should be enough. And literally the same process. I'm going to go min uniques 2. I'm going to pile those in. And one caveat though with FanDuel, and I say this all the time, if there's a place where you should think about doing the eye test, that would be FanDuel, because if you're going to SaberSim, because for whatever reason, SaberSim just loves to stack on FanDuel in the purest way possible to get you those 4-4s, to get you those 4-3s, to the point where it will elect to have a $2,100 9-hitter to make a 4-4 stack pretty over like a Mike Trout, one-off for 1,500 more, or something like that.
Right, right.
So I think in FanDuel, you got to be a little bit, more, suspicious. And that means you might want to leave money on the table. You might want to do you want to make sure you don't leave money on the table or whatever, but don't be surprised if you get lineups that like leave a lot of money on the table on FanDuel. So that's kind of my advice on that. So all I'm left to do really on DraftKings or on both these sites is figure out whether I want to be so stupid to play that freaking guy from Miami. But one thing that's interesting is that I do have like enough Heaney where if I decide later that I do want to screw around, I could totally swap Heaney for the Miami guy, especially if I have some Dodgers I could screw around with too. So if I can move the Dodgers to like the Rangers or something like that, and then end up playing the Miami guy and put Heaney for the Miami pitcher, I could definitely do that because of the start times. So I could see how these 7 o'clock games are rolling along before making those decisions. And as you saw then as you saw, the build that I just made on DraftKings did have a ton of Dodgers. So I do definitely have some flexibility to do that.
Yeah. I did want to throw out that just from a take standpoint, if I was playing on FanDuel, I would be Xing out. I don't know what Bueller's price is over there, but I would X him out, and I would probably
because of the
Well, I would do for the same reason I would also X Munoz out over there. I understand the play on DraftKings for value. I couldn't possibly understand it because for him to go 6 innings, he has to throw he's not going to throw more than like 80 pitches, Munoz. So like he's not really a start. They just used him as a starter for 2 starts. He's only had 2 starts. So I like that. Maybe they haven't seen him. He can get through 5 innings or something. But I don't think getting a quality start is going to be in the books. The team that takes the most pitches in baseball against a guy who's not able to throw pitches. In fact, I would probably take it a step further. I would probably eliminate Justin Steele and Steele I would be open to, but anybody who I think is on a pitch limit on FanDuel, I just want that quality start, man.
So I wish I would have walked it back because if you guys are watching, all I did was I had FanDuel up and I took an X by the check mark here of Walker Buehler. And what's so cool about when you build 5,000 lineups is that when I X'd out Walker Buehler, I didn't have to rerun anything. I didn't have to do anything. It automatically just eliminated the Walker Buehler lineups and replaced them with other ones that fit the other criterion without me having to do anything. So that's one of the real cool things about SaberSim is that when you make big wholesale changes like that, you don't have to rerun anything. It usually just has them all ready for you.
Yeah. I didn't realize exactly how cheap he was, by the way, when I said that. He's 8,300. I still don't like the play, but I thought he was gonna be 95 or something like that, and that would have made it a lot tougher. All right. Let's see what else. You want to talk a little NBA?
Yeah, I find it so hard to talk about the 2-game NBA slate, but tell me what you think.
Dude, I've got takes tonight.
Let's do it then. Let's do it.
All right. So
I'll build live. I'll do that. That'll do.
Yeah. That was the other thing frustrating. That was Friday. I forgot because I ended up 20th in the lottery, but it was like the 1 point away. I had a chance there at the chop. It would have been like a 10-way chop, but it would, it's probably been like $20,000 or so. Anyway, so the thing I like today, I really think it's worth speculating. I think the Knicks are going to play more guys in this game than people are projecting. Alec Burks has a 2 fantasy point projection tonight. I'm actually going to play Alec Burks, and I'm definitely going to play him in Showdown, but I'm also playing him on my regular slate a little bit. That's just because and the real better play is Precious, but that's going to have some ownership, so it's hard to get different with that play. But I do think getting a little exposure to Burks in a series where they're going to have to use a lot of guys and play a lot of minutes, I think if there's a game to do it, you want to feel out that first game. You let these guys get a feel. And Alec Burks is the kind of guy who can catch a little heater and potentially earn himself, 16, 18 minutes that Bogdanovich was getting before they just sort of didn't adjust against Philly. I'm not going to say that's going to be the same. They're still going to play not a ton of guys. But the other one that's too low owned is Mitch Robinson. I don't know why all of a sudden we're now afraid to play him at 4K. I love the Mitch Robinson play. I like getting to the Knicks. Obviously, that's going to be the chalky thing. But those three Knick plays are I think a good way to try to get different on a slate that's hard to get different on. I also think that Siakam should be a priority. I think Neesmith, obviously he's the chalky one. And I love Obi Toppin in this series. We'll see how it goes, but I really love him. And I also think, going back to McConnell, these are teen ownership guys or 20% owned guys. So they're not off the board. They're just, there are ways to get a little bit different. Kyle Anderson in the Minnesota-Denver game is another one of those. I think you could tell yourself a story and hope that Denver blows out Minnesota, and maybe Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Kyle Anderson, potentially even Monte Morris, see some minutes. So I'll be getting exposure to them in multiple entry things. Again, these are just the differentiators, mostly not the main plays. Christian Braun and Reggie Jackson would be the other two. Jamal Murray may actually be hurt more than we think, and we might have to see more Christian Braun or Reggie Jackson tonight. The flip side is I think Jamal Murray is also getting too low ownership, so I'd like to be overweight him where I'm not playing those guys. And I'm not saying you have to get a bunch of it, but Reggie Jackson's going to be 1% owned. You can play, 5, 8, 10% of it. You could play 15, 20% of Christian Braun. Those are the kind of things that I'm doing to get a little bit different. In my showdown, for what it's worth, I have 55% Alec Burks. I've got him all over the place, and he literally is a DNP CD possibility, but I don't think so.
Well, I'll throw one other thing in there. Listen, we don't. It's really not as big of a deal in the playoffs because everybody's fully motivated, in every game in the playoffs. But just remember that that the aforementioned Obi Toppin was drafted by the Knicks.
Absolutely,
and not that everybody's gonna be pumped for this game, for the series, right? Everybody's gonna be doing whatever, but if Obi is Obiing, you know what I mean? He could continue to Obi, and he could have a really, really good series here.
It's an interesting thing too. What'll happen with the fans and him, because the fans can drive a lot in Madison Square Garden, and the thing is, it's weird with him because he was always a fan favorite that they were complaining that he wasn't getting enough playing time. But now that he went to another team, will there be a mixed emotion thing? I think I don't know. I think there is something to it.
What do you think of this Ben Shepherd?
Ben Shepherd, I'm doing some of it, but again, I have Ben Shepherd is the obvious one that people are going to use for value, but not super ob. I'm not saying it as a knock, but this guy's projected to score 11 fantasy points and he's projected to be 20 some or 10 more between 10 and 25% owned. I honestly have a very hard time getting a feel for it because all of these cheap guys to me seem like they're getting too low ownership. I understand that you don't need to spend up as much on this slate, but I like the idea of playing Jokic and Brunson as a core. And try to get Edwards in there in some lineups. So you're going to have to play some of these guys. And I think you want to be overexposed to the value and play those three as your core. Although I'd say Edwards far less so than Brunson for me. Edwards can do it all. He has been doing it all. He doesn't absolutely have to do it all. You know what I mean? Whereas Brunson, there's pretty much no way around it. It's going to be 30 plus shots. Unless somebody else just gets crazy hot and then it'll be 15 assists. He's just, his projection, it's crazy to see. He's 9,500. He's got a 60 fantasy point projection for Jalen Brunson. I think it's reasonable.
Here's something that we're going to do here. One other lesson. As you guys saw, I just did the exact same process on DraftKings I just did on the MLB to build the classic slate lineups. I did the exact same stuff for the contest sims, made no changes other than that, and etc. Now, with respect to Showdown, here's again, for those of you that don't follow this too often, this is the way I kind of cheat with with using SaberSim. I don't have separate sheets and projections for the Showdown slates because it's basically the same projections and the same points. But so what I do is I just do the whole classic slate upload to the Showdown, and you'll see it doesn't match these 17 players because these guys, half of them are not in this game. So we will then just upload all those guys and we'll run the same process. The only difference is that when you do that, you're getting the ownership that you had for the classic slate, which obviously is not going to apply to the Showdown. So what I do is just reset the ownership and use the SaberSim ownership. So I'll use the my projections, but the Saber Sim ownership for Showdown. And that's just kind of what I do. So we'll do the same thing. And the only thing that you might want to do differently, again, with Showdown, is do some kind of duplication like medicine, but either, forcing in low ownership or leaving money on the table. But what I heard today was that leaving money on the table is almost forced in some sense. So I mean, I haven't noticed that, but if that's the case, then leaving money on the table isn't going to really help too much. So if you do want to be like a stickler for dupes, then you'll do a geo-mean thing, which I'll show you how to do. But just a word of caution, like basketball projects really well. Okay. It just does. And when you get too kooky, like in the NBA, it's just very rare that you win. I mean, and I've tried, I've plugged away with the NBA Showdown this year more than last season, and I've won some, but I've never really even got close with any of my unique lineups. Like the only times I've ever actually won was when I've like chopped with like 10 people minimum, whereas football, I always have a couple of like shots in there, just because of the way points distribute. Like if you have like a $200 dude, if he gets one touchdown, that's all you need. It's not like that in the NBA. You know what I mean? Like you got to get you got to get the minutes, and you got to sustain the minutes, and you got to score. It's not like you can come in for one play like in football and then get there. It just doesn't work that way. So I would recommend that based on my experience, that if you're going to play NBA Showdown, you can get different, but don't try to get too different, because you'll chase uniqueness right into bankruptcy. It's very, very difficult.
Yeah, I understand that. I also think, though, that playoffs are very different in general, and you end up with situations where guys become like Buddy Hield was not playing any minutes at all, and then he was like the fourth highest scoring fantasy point player on that slate. You know what I mean?
That's true.
And you just have things where teams make adjustments, or something happens and somebody gets hot, and then you ride that wave. It's just a very different thing, and that's why I like the speculation in these situations with guys like Alec Burks. And Shepard is less speculative, but plays like that, I think I'd like to use them. I would like to use. Look, I don't think Denver's going to blow out Minnesota tonight, but I think it happens enough of the time where you play Kyle Anderson and Monty Morris some, and hope you get your 13, 14 fantasy points, and maybe that's better than the other 3K guys, because nobody's projected that high even for them. And also on the flip side, you could build a lineup with one of those guys, and Kyle Anderson and Christian Braun, or Kyle Anderson and Reggie Jackson. I think that's a reasonable route to take. Like, I think there's some logic behind it, and trying to take some shots on these super cheapos. And one thing Brandon pointed out is just how many times this postseason the winning lineups have had a player who scored 0. Now, that's not going to happen in the Knicks and Pacers game tonight. That's not possible. It happened in the Lakers-Nuggets series, because to spend up for AD, LeBron, and Jokic, with one of them being captain, you had to play guys at the minimum. And it will happen sometimes in the Denver-Minnesota series, possibly as the series goes on, but it will happen much more in the Dallas series. It'll happen. That's the one where I think you look out for those. Make sure to force in the minimum guys, because you're going to need to try to play Luka, Kyrie, and Shea, or Luka, Shea, and Jalen Williams, and one of those as captains. It's going to leave you very little room.
So if you did want to do the geo-mean stuff, by the way, again, what you do is you see how many people there in the contest. You can get that either from the lobby or from the contest sim setting here, 7843. And then on the TrueDFS site, there's this calculator, which is, I'm kind of showing the offsite version of it, where you put the number of players in the lineup, the number of entries, and then the number of dupes you want as max. And then this number spits out this geo-mean number, which is 22.4. So what you do then is go back into SaberSim after you have done a build, and then do this filter here to only lineups that are, say, less than 22.43. And then it will give you like a bunch of these. And I do encourage you to not look to see what you're getting. But you would probably get like some of that aforementioned like Obi Toppin in the captain business, There was another guy that you mentioned that I thought I was going to get more of. Who's another the Alec Burks. Like I didn't get him in the captain.
Yeah, you won't get. I forced him into the one captain I did. They just didn't want to give him to me as a captain.
They did not. That is
because Miles McBride is so cheap. It's just you may as well go that route. You know.
So that's one thing you could do to try to get unique. But again, you really proceed at your own risk with that.
Yeah, I want to throw out one more thing about just a strategy thing that's it's really worth speculating in the playoffs about certain things. And I mentioned a few things like the obviously the Burks is the one I've mentioned the most. I just want to point out that Kyle Anderson actually got in foul trouble, only played 12 minutes the first game. I don't know for sure that they're not I don't think anybody has a realistic idea how many minutes he's going to play, including the team, because he was banged up for a while. And then the last game of the Phoenix series, he played some minutes. And he was questionable for every one of those games, and he ended up playing. But right now, he's being projected to only play 10 minutes, and there's a reasonable chance he could play 20. During the season, he's a 24-minute a game, 25-minute a game guy. That's completely on the table here. And I think it's just so worth it. I know I sound like a broken record, but just speculate on these things, get these guys in your mix, and these 2% owned plays could literally win you a tournament, which is crazy to think on a 2-game slate, but you really can get away with it. Because you have to see what the coaches do. Not to mention foul trouble, injuries, things happen. You know what I mean? We saw TJ McConnell. Brandon almost won the big show, the big 2-gamer with McConnell, Nemhard, and Halliburton, which is like almost impossible to get home. And he did it. He almost got that. He almost got home. Anyway, just want to throw out some, what I'm thinking about. But the hardest fade tonight is going to be Jalen Brunson. I don't know how many lineups I'm going to be able to do it. I'm going to force him out of some, and I don't know how that works unless I don't even know. They won't call fouls on him, so foul trouble doesn't seem possible. Maybe. Anyway, he's the hardest one to fade though. Like they're saying he's going to be 50% owned. I'd be shocked if he's not like 90% owned.
Do we have Dodger stuff yet or no? Probably not.
Dodgers have been out it came out the way we thought it would. Outman and Lux at the bottom.
And what about Miami? Anything?
Don't have anything from Miami yet. And let me see. I'll just double check real quick because I haven't. Yeah, Miami and Texas still don't have a team out yet. By the way, I'm feeling incredible about my Texas guys tonight. Like literally, people didn't want to play them anyway. The fact that when everybody's building, they don't have their lineup out. They're just going to be lower owned than even they're projected. How is their run total 4 here? I almost feel like this game is like being treated like it's a double header with the 7 or the old double header with the 7 innings. I know they've been struggling, but I think it's too low, and it's way too much respect for Alex Wood, in my opinion, who actually hasn't been bad. But
yeah, why is Alex Wood so respected here?
It's a weird, right? A 4 run total for Texas. I mean, I know it's Texas. I know they've struggled, but like I don't know.
Is there weather or something?
No, it's Oakland. It's not like a hitter's park, but it's 58 degrees, which is, pretty much normal. I mean, for this time of year, it's not, wind blowing out at 9 miles an hour. And I say Texas, has been struggling, and they put up 15 runs 2 games ago, so it's not like they've all been duds, but they've had a lot of like shutouts, 1 and 2 run games this season, and they are missing Josh Jung. This is not the best their lineup will be, but I'd rather get it now. I hear a lot of people talking about Mets who've they've been basically a below average offense all season, and now their best players out of not in the lineup. I can do it, but it doesn't make a ton of and they're getting ownership, so it doesn't make as much sense to me as like St. Louis at the same ownership if I had to pick, and they're both bad.
Has DeAndre Jordan played at all in the playoffs?
No, but there's a lot of speculation that he might, because there's so many bigs on the other side. Peyton Watson was horrible, and there's a lot of rumors that he might like not be in the rotation anymore, and that could go to Jordan. I'm going to go back to Watson. I also think if there's blowout run, I don't think you're going to see DeAndre Jordan out there when they're up 30 in the 4th or something, if there was something like that, whereas you would definitely see Peyton Watson out there. I played Jordan Showdown.
And we kind of like Reggie Jackson a little bit.
I mean, Murray's still banged up. Reggie Jackson was, I believe, optimal in game 1. Don't see why we have to assume that he can't do anything in game 2. You know who wasn't on the winning lineup, by the way?
Who?
Jokic.
Jokic is not in the winning lineup.
With basically the same amount of time, basically with Anthony Edwards for the most fantasy points. They basically had the same amount of fantasy points, and they were way more than everybody else. But there wasn't a way to get him in with Edwards as one with those guys as captains that was good enough. It's like the old when what's his name won the U.S. Open. When I always go back to that one when John Rahm.
Tiger?
No, John Rahm won the U.S. Open, but wasn't on any winning lineup because literally the guys second through seventh or whatever it was, second through seventh, they were all literally all the top price guys that you had to play them together with that specific mix to get the optimal, and that's what ended up winning was second through seventh in basically all the tournaments, which is just crazy. Do you want to hear the crazy golf stat real quick? I mean, I'll just say it. It's a funny one. So the difference between Scotty's number 1 in the world, Rory's number 2. The difference in points between them for the rankings are the same difference between Rory and Tiger Woods right now. And Tiger Woods is number 289 in the world.
That's pretty funny.
Isn't that wild? I thought that was incredible.
He's between Scheffler and then that whatever her name is. No, the woman, the girl. They're freaking rigged. It's like ridiculous.
It's so stupid how you can be that much better at a sport like this. I don't understand it. Yeah, exactly. I don't understand it.
All right, so I'm gonna be putting up my staking stuff, and then I guess I'm kind of good.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna get out and bounce around some stuff. We don't get as many questions up for baseball and everything. Goldie just updated his projections, by the way. But I'll be in the Discord if anybody has thoughts or questions about the NBA. For what it's worth, I want to make my point about the Knicks and Pacers series real quick. It wouldn't surprise me. I know this sounds nuts. It wouldn't surprise me if either team won in 4 or 5 games, but I think that's surprising to most people that I think the Pacers even have a chance. I just don't know. I'm just curious to see if these guys can hold up with their bodies and play 46 minutes against the team that's going to just try to run you to death and play 11 guys and do whatever they can to make you extend yourself. The Knicks logically seem like I guess that's why. I mean, I guess the Pacers at 3-1 as a series underdog. That's probably a good bet. But there's also, I think, a really good chance the Knicks just sweep them. I think both are totally possible. But if the Pacers 1-5, I'm not surprised at all.
I'll say this. Thibodeau is pretty bad. So we will see.
Bad Sheets? What's the matter with you? You have the best Knicks run in a million years, and now you're mad at the coach?
He's a pretty bad on-court coach. I'm not interested. We'll see. I think if there are adjustments to be made, I don't think he's gonna. I trust the other guy. Can I tell you?
I like Carlisle too. By the way, the coach. I think he's an awesome coach. But I come on, Thibodeau's a great coach, though. I can't believe you don't like Tibbs. He's the reason Jalen Brunson got to be Jalen Brunson.
Yeah, because he plays his guys 100 minutes. I mean, yeah.
Well, but that's okay. But look, they're competitive.
He's great. Listen, he's great. He's great. He's great for fantasy. He is.
Oh, come on.
He's terrific for fantasy.
Somebody also, though, it is kind of crazy that total is 2-7. I don't remember seeing a Knicks game at 217 since the 5th game of the season. It's weird.
What time is that last game? 10 o'clock. All right. So
yeah, plenty of time.
Plenty of time. Yeah. And by the way, as I mentioned for you guys earlier, I made the final round in the MMA live qualifier thing. One more cut, and then I make the live final. And there's a lot of history with that one. I won it. I made it last year, and I wasn't able to go because of all kinds of Sheets World variants. So I said I'm going to make it this year. And this year, I was going to not be able to come even if I made this one, but I had to cancel a trip. So I will be around if in fact I make it. And this weekend is the cut down from 40 to 15. And I already looked at the salaries, and it's completely impossible. So I'm going to be doing a lot of coin flipping and a lot of stewing. I have probably 4 lineups already that I'm going to be kind of going back and forth on and straining and sweating over the next 5 days before I figure out what to do. But
take it down so you can go this time too.
I'd love to. But remember, it's not even a question of taking it down, right? It's 30. You got to finish the top 37.5%, 15 out of 40. And I'll also be able to see who's still in. So I know that if some guys have multiple entries, I'm pretty sure I know where they're going to split their exposures, and see if I can't figure out who people are playing. It's listen, it's very, very tough, but it's pretty challenging, and I love it, and I like it. So, all right, I'm going to get out of here. Good luck, everybody, and I'll see you near the top of the leaderboard.
Yes, good luck, guys. Have a good night, Cheats, and yeah, let's make some money, fellas. See you.